Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I am so excited to be talking with my guest today because we're going to talk about how to really promote your business and maybe even yourself. And so please join me in welcoming Bofta Yimam to our program today. Welcome, Bofta. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you, Deb, for having me here. I'm so excited to be here.
Great. Well, let me tell people just a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this. So Bofta Yimam is an Emmy Award-Winning journalist, an international speaker, and the founder of StoryLede, a fractional marketing and communications agency that uses storytelling to position companies and their CEOs as industry leaders so they can skyrocket their visibility, impact, and growth. Before launching StoryLede, Bofta worked as a local and national TV correspondent for more than a decade, including reporting from the White House for CBS News. She is the first Ethiopian-American newscaster to receive an Emmy Award and is a sought-after speaker who's spoken in London, Africa, as well as across the U.S. She is the recipient of multiple awards, including the 2023 Women Enterprising Women Award. In 2025, Bofta was selected to be on the national forum for WBENC, the largest certifier of women-owned businesses. So again, Bofta, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. I am thrilled partly today because it's also sunny outside here and we have been just waiting for sunny weather. I don't know where everyone is right now, but if you've got a little sun, it's time to milk that thing because it is just like, it has been hard this winter.
Right. And we're recording this in mid-March, and it's like, and spring keeps doing this tease, right? I'm in Atlanta, and we'll get really nice, and then poof, I'm like, seriously.
I know. And there could be other things to complain about, so I'm just soaking in the weather, right? It's just like, okay, it's beautiful outside. I'm grateful for it.
I love it. Well, I just touched on a little bit of your background. Tell us a little bit more about how it is that you got to where you are today, because I have a feeling it's a very interesting journey.
Yeah, I really asked you right earlier before we even hit go on this podcast, like, how long do we have? Because it's been a journey, right? And for the sake of brevity, I won't talk about every piece, but I think that there's pieces of the journey that I've had that I'm really grateful for because it wasn't easy.
Right.
And had it been easy, I honestly don't think I would be as grateful. And I think a lot of us could say that about different journeys of our lives, right? Not just a career journey, but things we've gone through personally as well. We're so much more grateful after we've gone through something. Right. So I knew that I wanted to work within the TV world as a reporter.
Okay.
And as a news reporter, but getting my foot in the door was really hard, Deb. I applied to more than 100 TV stations. I actually not too far from you in Atlanta, so I'll mention where I started. It's a very small town, Dalton, Georgia, 40,000 people. Independent station was my very first job on air. And the reality is even to get that job, which was again a very small independent station in the South and 8 hours from home. And to get that job, I actually ended up, how I got it was because after college, I did an internship, not paid, at a station in Virginia. And I thought, Deb, that I was going to get that internship. And I'm sharing this story for a reason because sometimes we have our heart set on something. We're like, we're going to get this. We know it's in the bag. I was good with the news director. News director, I don't know if he got fired, let go, whatever happened. But by the end of the summer, he was no longer there.
Oh, no.
And I was like, well, what am I going to do? It just so happens that an anchor at the station, Melanie, she befriended me. She was someone who was helping me with my resume reel and my on-air presence and my writing. And she said, you know, if you're willing to go to the South, I actually started at a small station in Dalton, Georgia. And I said, yeah, I'm willing to go do anything. I'm willing to go anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she recommended me to Calvin Means, the news director at that small station at the
Okay.
time. And I still didn't have it in the bag because they weren't hiring, Deb.
Mm-hmm.
So I told him, I'm going to actually go to Atlanta, which was a little bit of a fib,
Mm-hmm.
and meet with some friends. Would you mind if I just drove and met you? Because I wanted to be on
Right.
the top of the list,
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be on the top of the list and beat out the competition.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very competitive, especially at that time. So I went to Atlanta. I met him, still no job opening, met him for probably a little bit, you know, an hour or so.
Mm-hmm.
And then went back to Atlanta, visited my so-called friends, air
Mm-hmm.
quotes, and went back on the plane back to
Mm-hmm.
Maryland. 8 months later, he had an opening and
Wow.
I got the job.
Right.
Yeah.
You'd made such a great impression.
Yeah, apparently I got the job, you know, I got the job. It was and most people would say, well, then it must have been your big break. And I hesitated, Deb, at the time. I was a little bit
Mm-hmm.
embarrassed of the salary. So I was hesitating when people were like, oh my God, you got your big break. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, well, kind of. I mean, it's
Big-ish.
$15,000 a year, $15,000
Wow.
a year. Not that long ago, folks,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
$15,000 a year, but I was hungry, you know, I wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed there and then moved up to a bigger, you know, bigger station, but it was still
Mm-hmm.
small,
Mm-hmm.
CBS station, but at least,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I now have the call letters of CBS.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved to Memphis where I got a bigger jump.
Mm-hmm.
And same, by the way, I applied that same strategy, told a news director, I just went to different news
Just
directors and
popping
said,
in.
I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
be in town with my friends.
Mm-hmm.
And for Memphis, Deb, this is a great story. I drove after working a weekend anchor shift in Macon, Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
8 or 10 hours to
Mm-hmm.
get to Memphis, Tennessee the next morning.
Mm-hmm.
And the news director there, only one news director responded in Memphis out of 3 stations.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, yeah, come on and let's talk, you know, while you're meeting your friends.
Mm-hmm.
I get there, it's a tornado day.
Oh, oh no.
He had 10 minutes. I just drove overnight, like
Mm-hmm.
10 hours.
Mm-hmm.
He had 10 minutes for me, Deb.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I was like, I got in my car after the 10 minutes and
Mm-hmm.
I literally had a small tear that came down
Yes.
because I
Oh
was
dear.
exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh my goodness. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, well, you know, it's weather. Go have fun with your friends. It's a tornado day. You know how news goes. I was like, yes, I do. But he didn't
Mm-hmm.
know that I
Mm-hmm.
had just put so much on the line and
Right.
drove my clunker of a
Mm-hmm.
car across the Mid-South.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, 4 months later, he flew me out and I got the job. I kid you
Again,
not.
you'd
I
made
kid you
such a great
not.
impression.
I
Mm-hmm.
kid you
Mm-hmm.
not. So there's a lot of power, and I share those, you know, quick stories because there's a lot of power in going for something, even when it feels out of reach,
Mm-hmm.
and getting that face-to-face opportunity,
Right.
that
Mm-hmm.
in-person opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're going for a job or something
Mm-hmm.
else. There's just something about being in person that's just
Mm-hmm.
really powerful,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you want something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, I was doing the work too. I was improving my skill
Mm-hmm.
sets. I was
Mm-hmm.
going to conferences. It wasn't just that I was showing up and expecting
Mm-hmm.
something in an entitled manner. I'm here and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to get it. But it was putting myself out there. So I
Mm-hmm.
knew that I tried. And I think a lot of times we get discouraged. We're like, well, you know, it's not meant for me. But did you
Mm-hmm.
try? Like, did you
Mm-hmm.
go after it?
Right.
Really? And this
Did you
applies to
talk
business
yourself out
too.
of it before you ever even
Yeah,
tried?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when I decided to get into business, I was still, by that point, I had moved up to a top 25 market in
Mm-hmm.
Pittsburgh, and then I was an anchor there, and I'd done
Mm-hmm.
investigative reporting. So this is years and years later.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time I wanted to do a business, I said to myself, if I could hear 100 no's, Deb, 100 no's to
Mm-hmm.
even get into that small
Mm-hmm.
TV station where I made, you know, literally no
Mm-hmm.
money. If I could do that, I can do this business thing because
Mm-hmm.
I can hear a no. I'm cool. I'll just go another direction. I'll
Right.
just try again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't take it to heart too much.
Mm-hmm.
So that's business half the time. You got to
Mm-hmm.
hear a lot of
Mm-hmm.
no's, you know, or
Right.
maybes or not nows, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the entrepreneurial journey for those, you know, on your podcast, the
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurial journey for me started like so many people where you just feel that nudge of something inside of you
Mm-hmm.
that's saying, you got to try this. And I
Mm-hmm.
kept asking myself, if I went to the end of my years on this earth, because we all have a
Mm-hmm.
timestamp,
Mm-hmm.
right? Will I be okay if I don't try this
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurial journey? Like,
Right.
would I be okay with myself?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer was no. So, although I had worked incredibly hard in my career,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a lot of fear of like, well, what if it doesn't, and this and
Mm-hmm.
this and that. So I started to say to myself, if you put all your energy into this, I think you can be able to play in different worlds. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to do. I just didn't want to be boxed in. And I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to build more impact, more
Mm-hmm.
freedom, more wealth. I wanted
Mm-hmm.
more in my
Mm-hmm.
life. And so with that came a ton of learning
Mm-hmm.
because I did not have a business degree, y'all,
Mm-hmm.
at all. Right. So I went into really high-end kind of business programs that I paid for myself,
Mm-hmm.
marketing programs.
Mm-hmm.
I just immersed myself in education while I still had a job. I think that's the key, while I still had the
Yes.
job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I didn't have much social life that year
Mm-hmm.
because I was working
Mm-hmm.
or working in the business or
Mm-hmm.
doing
Mm-hmm.
some type of,
Working on yourself.
program. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
personal development. I had coaches, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so I was determined to do it. And I'm so glad I did.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean every year has been easy since I went full time. But what I'm appreciative of is that I've just continued to learn. I've continued to learn, and I think it's very empowering, Deb, and you know this too well yourself, to create your own economy, to be able to create your own economy, and for me to now teach my daughter how to do that one day if she chooses to do that, I think is very powerful. It's really powerful, and I did not have silver spoon. Both my parents,
Mm-hmm.
immigrants to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
They came in the late 60s, early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
They had tried different entrepreneurial
Mm-hmm.
things. Um, and I had seen ups and downs with both financial,
Mm-hmm.
just a whole lot of things. We at one point lived in a very big house for a long time, and then foreclosure hit. I was in high school. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I had been the product of somebody kind of watching finances and
Mm-hmm.
how it can really, really improve or hurt your trajectory,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Mm-hmm.
can be hard to climb out of stuff.
Right.
And so in seeing all of that, I didn't go into broadcast with a silver spoon of I have
Mm-hmm.
somebody paying my car note or
Mm-hmm.
something. I had to figure it out. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's why I say I think there's a lot of power in that, because once I decided to start a business, I was like, well, what's to lose?
Mm-hmm.
If it
Right.
doesn't work, you just do something else.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have that much tied to, oh my goodness, what's going to happen. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I like to share
Mm-hmm.
stories. Obviously, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
storyteller,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that there's a lot of power
Mm-hmm.
um in the journey.
So we had to take a quick little break. And so Bofta was telling us her story about how she got to where she is today and really not accepting no as an answer.
Right. And I think that, like we said, Deb, in business, so often you're hearing no or not
Mm-hmm.
now. And that's why whatever you've gone through where you've
Mm-hmm.
heard a lot of no's, I think just sets you up and prepares you
Mm-hmm.
for
Right.
for business.
Mm-hmm. Well, and how
Yeah,
boring would life be if all we heard was yes?
totally. You're so
Right?
right.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that, but yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting. I was interviewing somebody else earlier today, and he was talking about Michael Jordan and how Michael Jordan said, you relish the wins because of the losses. And that is,
Mm,
I think, so true.
yeah, yeah, that's good. He's got some good quotes.
I know we love Michael Jordan, right?
Yeah,
But yeah, it's an interesting journey, but it is a story,
yeah.
which is obviously what you focus on. And so tell
Hmm.
us a little bit more. And of course, journalists tell
Yeah,
stories. That is
right.
what they are doing.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of as part of this. But tell us why you decided to start your own story, your own agency, and focus on
Yeah.
storytelling.
Well, truth be told, I wanted to do something that I love doing
Mm-hmm.
and that I felt a lot of entrepreneurs needed,
Mm-hmm.
because as a journalist, even I interviewed a lot of
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs, and it was difficult for them to really tell me the compelling pieces of their
Mm-hmm.
story,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or I had to wait quite a bit before we got to
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
real nugget.
Right.
And so I thought that this would be where I could have the most impact
Mm-hmm.
and how I could just help people.
Mm-hmm.
So, I also didn't want, the years that I spent in crafting
Mm-hmm.
storytelling to
Mm-hmm.
go to waste. I'd
Right.
worked in video, I'd
Mm-hmm.
worked
Mm-hmm.
in print. So I understood storytelling in different realms. And I thought, well, if I could help translate this to business
Mm-hmm.
owners, it'd be really powerful. And so
Mm-hmm.
today we do everything from what's on your website, the website
Right.
language,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
all the way to ghostwriting LinkedIn
Mm-hmm.
content, which is one of our biggest
Mm-hmm.
top sellers, probably, Deb,
Mm-hmm.
is writing content in the proper tone and
Ooh,
voice
we're going to talk more
and
about that.
language
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
And so that nobody knows that we are writing their
Right.
content.
Which is a good
The audience does
ghostwriter.
not know. Exactly, which is a good ghostwriter.
Mhm.
And so we do everything from
Mhm.
like those types of things all the way to, your presentation decks
Mhm.
and capability
Mhm.
statements. We have a full team of graphic designers, copy editors, project managers, so
Mhm.
that we can really execute and
Mhm.
be that fractional marketing department.
Mhm.
And Deb, I want to say this too. We want you to not need us one day. We want you to have your own
Right.
department one day.
Learn how
But
to do it
until
yourself or hire it.
yeah,
Right.
or higher.
Mhm.
And until you get to that point, we know you need support.
Mhm.
And so we really offer it so small, medium-sized businesses can take
Mhm.
advantage of this during a very critical time
Mhm.
of their business when they're growing, but they just don't have the
Mhm.
ability to spend,
Right.
500,000 on every team
Mhm.
member you need to
Mhm.
execute your
Mhm.
strategies.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, the whole concept with storytelling is that it's done right.
Mm-hmm.
How many times you mentioned, they either think, oh, I can't tell a story, people don't care, or they don't tell the right story. So
Yeah.
how do you work with people to develop that appropriate content?
Such a good question, Deb. So we really, really go into it like an interview. So
Okay.
we extract interviews every single month from our
Mhm.
clients, and we're
Mhm.
really going deep into not just what the story is, but what's the lesson? What are your
Mhm.
values? How does it tie into that?
Mhm.
And then we have to focus on what we do best, which is how do we take the most compelling pieces
Mhm.
and really run with it from the idea of what's going to engage your target audience. So
Mhm.
we're always going back to who are you trying to communicate
Mhm.
to? What are you trying to communicate?
Mhm.
And where is your individual or the organization you're targeting? Where are they in the journey?
Mhm.
So if they are, let's say you're a digital marketing company and you're targeting the Targets of the world or Google's or
Right.
you're
Mhm.
you're going after Fortune 500s,
Mhm.
very different place where they
Mhm.
are in the journey
Mhm.
than if you're speaking to somebody who's 5 years into their
Mhm.
business, right? And so you have to really get clear on what are their, I like to call it the PDF, your pains, desires, and frustrations
Mhm.
of your target audience,
Mhm.
and just focusing in on that target
Mhm.
audience. Now, Deb, I get a lot of people who ask, well, what if I have different audiences I'm targeting?
Right. Mhm.
Mixed messaging is often what happens as a result
Mhm.
of that, which does
Right.
not
They
bode
try and
well for good
combine everything into
storytelling.
one.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it doesn't work. It
Mhm.
doesn't work for storytelling, the messaging, everything gets lost. So you
Mhm.
really want to be speaking to the PDF, the pains, desires,
Mhm.
frustrations of that one target audience.
Mhm.
And I say focus on them for the next six
Mhm.
months, year.
Mhm.
Really, really hone in on them because your
Mhm.
website should be talking to them,
Mhm.
your LinkedIn content should be talking to them, your IG, if you use
Mhm.
IG for, some people don't, use it for
Mhm.
personal and they don't use it for business.
Mhm.
But if you're using it for business,
Mhm.
everything should be
Right.
speaking the same tone
Mhm.
and feel and vibe, which is why graphics matter and
Mhm.
visuals and carousels on
Right.
LinkedIn and video and so forth. And a lot of people might be thinking, well, I'm just getting started. Let's say there's some
Mhm.
people watching this,
Mhm.
listening to this. I'm just getting started. So what I always tell people is go with the platform where your people hang out. So
Right.
if your people
Mhm.
hang out on LinkedIn, that's where you want to be.
Mhm.
But also what's most important is that you're also providing the content in a format
Mhm.
that you can do best and consistently.
Mhm.
So some people will say, well, I can get on video, or
Mhm.
I never want to get on video, Deb. I want to
Mhm.
do more writing. Well,
Mhm.
then write.
Mhm.
But you've got to pick some type of format that
Right.
you're going to leverage to
Mhm.
reach your ideal
Mhm.
audience. And then the storytelling can be honed in. I offer
Mhm.
storytelling tips on my LinkedIn,
Mhm.
where I talk about what you can do to help engage and capture your audience.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
some of the things that you need to pay attention to is the lead. Hence
Mhm.
the name of my brand is
Mhm.
StoryLede,
Mhm.
LEDE, the way we spell
Mhm.
it in journalism.
Right.
Because
And it
what
is
does
an
every
acronym, and we're going to talk about that.
yeah, because what does every news director
Mhm.
ask reporters at the 9 a.m.
Mhm.
meeting? What is our lead story today?
Mhm.
And so we
Right.
encourage at StoryLede, my company, we encourage
Mhm.
business owners, Deb, to think of themselves the same way. Like
Mhm.
what's a story that I'm talking
Right.
about the most?
Mhm.
What's a story that I'm going to leverage the
Mhm.
most?
Mhm.
And when does it apply? And who does it
Mhm.
apply to? And when you
Mhm.
start to think like that, the stories come and you can start to pluck the ones that are the
Mhm.
most compelling.
Mhm.
Now, you asked a really good question that I don't want to dismiss. Is like how can we get better at telling the stories?
Mhm. Mhm.
First, what I encourage people to do, and anyone can do this, anyone listening, write down your most transformational moments.
Okay.
So very simple, but
Mhm.
like the before and after. So you went
Mhm.
from this to that.
Mhm.
You went from making X amount to making X amount,
Mhm.
right? So I told a little bit of that, in my
Mhm.
$15,000 a year salary
Mhm.
story.
Mhm.
That's transformation to go from
Right.
that to then building a
Mhm.
successful business,
Mhm.
right? And so how do we do that? Now,
Mhm.
I'm on a podcast. I could talk about it longer. I have the ability to do that. Well, you're on LinkedIn, not so much. You got to
Mhm.
cut, right? And cut.
Mhm. Mhm.
But writing down is the first step. I'd say like write down 10
Mhm.
transformational moments.
Mhm.
Then cross out those that you're like, they're too personal. I don't
Okay.
want to discuss
Mhm.
this. Some people don't want to discuss
Mhm.
something really, really personal.
Mhm.
It could be transformational, but it doesn't apply
Mhm.
to your target
Right.
audience,
Mhm.
right? Okay. So we don't need to tell the audience everything we went through in
Mhm.
life.
Mhm.
Okay. So then you want to start to cross out, and you can make this list 20 if you want to. If you can think of
Mhm.
20 transformational
Mhm.
moments, cross out the ones that don't really apply to your target audience.
Mhm.
Then you want to circle the ones that every time you say it, people's eyes light up.
Right. And they do the tell me more.
Right. Exactly.
Mhm.
Right. And so if you're not telling it to people, then you need to think about where was the lesson. So circle the ones
Okay.
where you had like a lesson in
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And so that's a way to, once you pluck those out, it's a lot
Mhm.
easier to write them because
Mhm.
you've plucked out the ones
Mhm.
that are most transformational.
Mhm.
And then you want to start to think about, okay, well, what am I starting with to
Mhm.
bring in the audience? One of the things that you want to pay attention to is when you look at your previous content pieces,
Mhm.
what are the ones that really gain traction?
Mhm. Mhm.
And what did you do in those circumstances? Did you
Mhm.
start out with a question about your journey? Did you start out with something about your current business?
Mhm.
What did you tell them that they were really engaged
Mhm.
about?
Mhm.
And a lot of people, Deb, will go straight to like, well, I won this award, but awards aren't every day.
Mhm.
And awards are not value-based. So you really want to
Mhm.
focus on value-based content where you're
Mhm.
providing tips, much like I'm saying right now,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
they could do that for their respective
Mhm.
industry. And you just want to provide tips that are very
Mhm.
value-based that people can
Right.
actually apply.
Mhm.
And you know that you do it well. But I think those are some ways where you can start to get into the storytelling. But first you got to know what is a story that I want to share.
Mhm. Right.
Let's start with that.
Right.
Mhm.
And one of the things that people get hung up on is the who are they talking to? Who's their target audience?
Yeah.
And I always love it if you say, Bofta, who's your target market? And you say everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that no, right?
No,
Um,
no.
there's no company in the world, I don't think,
Yeah.
that targets everybody.
Hmm.
And so, how do you get them? And of course, the hard part is especially if you're starting out and you're hungry
Yes.
and you're lean
Yes.
and you're
Yes.
thinking, and okay, now granted, we've all probably had clients that we shouldn't have because we needed to pay the
Yeah.
bills, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
But how does kind of this, because it really does make a difference when they're developing the story, when they know exactly who they are dealing with and who they want to
Yes.
reach. So how do you kind of walk them through that process?
Yeah. And I love what you said because you can't target everybody. I think it was Jay Abraham, marketing guru, who said you message to everyone, you message to no one.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very true.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I would encourage everyone to think about is who values what you offer the most.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people may come to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, I like to speak sometimes in family terms, like your brother, your sister,
Right.
your
Mm-hmm.
aunt
Mm-hmm.
may all come to you, but it was really meant for your mom.
Mm-hmm.
The gift was
Mm-hmm.
really meant for your mom, but everyone's now asking for that
Mm-hmm.
gift, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was really meant for your mom because your mom fit that gift. It was perfect for
Mm-hmm.
her. And some people will say, well, what about my cousin? Yeah, okay, yeah, we could talk about your cousin
Mm-hmm.
too.
Yeah, and your market can expand, but it needs to be
Yes.
small to start with. Mm-hmm.
And people will come to you anyways, but
Mm-hmm.
who you target is different because they value the dollar you're placing on it. They
Mm-hmm.
value the impact.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to think about who will I bring the most
Mm-hmm.
impact to?
Right.
So plenty of times when you're thinking about this, you
Mm-hmm.
start to then think, who doesn't this apply to?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So start with that if you're
Mm-hmm.
really struggling with
Mm-hmm.
who. And then I would actually encourage people to think this is the easy way to kind of I think extract who this belongs, who your product or service belongs to is who didn't flinch at the number.
Mm-hmm.
Who
Right.
didn't flinch because they
Mm-hmm.
valued it. So
Mm-hmm.
they didn't flinch when you said it's
Mm-hmm.
X amount per
Mm-hmm.
month, insert the dollar amount.
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes we are saying yes to everyone coming in the door because like you
Mm-hmm.
said, lean and so forth, at the
Mm-hmm.
very beginning of your startup, of
Mm-hmm.
your business. And so then you realize they're not getting the value.
Right.
So they may not come back or
Mm-hmm.
refer you.
Mm-hmm.
But people who value you are referring
Mm-hmm.
you because you're getting them the
Mm-hmm.
results. So be mindful of what you're promising
Mm-hmm.
and who you can actually get the results
Mm-hmm.
for. So, for example, there are plenty of people who come and ask us about working with StoryLede.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask them a series of questions to
Mm-hmm.
identify if they're a good fit, because I want to make sure that we can
Right.
actually
Mm-hmm.
deliver.
Mm-hmm.
And are they prepared to do the things? I always say it's a
Mm-hmm.
partnership. There's going to be things that they need to do on
Mm-hmm.
their end. So while we carry out much of the work and execute,
Mm-hmm.
there's still things that
Mm-hmm.
we need their support on. If
Right.
we ask you for a photo, if we
Mm-hmm.
ask you for
Mm-hmm.
this, are you going
Mm-hmm.
to make time and carve
Mm-hmm.
time to do it? So I'm also sussing out, are they an ideal client
Mm-hmm.
for us? And guess
Right.
what that does? That makes them say, oh, I really want to work with you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They see
Or
that you're
it
selective.
eliminates, you know,
Or it
and let's be
eliminates.
honest,
Yeah,
that's great. You know,
that's
I've
good
had
too.
clients where I've started going through that process and I thought, nope, you know,
Yeah,
and for whatever reason, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong. It just
right.
meant we're not a good fit.
Yeah,
You know, and what it would, you know, and you know, yeah, like we said, sometimes you're lean, you're wanting to do it. But if it's not a good fit, you're not going
yeah.
to give 100%.
No, and frankly, it's going to cause you a lot of
Mm-hmm.
trouble. Like, get out
Mm-hmm.
while you can, almost like
Right.
it's going to cause you a headache
Mm-hmm.
because maybe you overpromised
Mm-hmm.
something, or they're going to be an unhappy
Mm-hmm.
customer.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just going to be such
Mm-hmm.
a mess. Your best bet is just to stay in integrity
Mm-hmm.
as you make the offer. And
Right.
I love what you said, like the selectiveness of the
Mm-hmm.
process can also eliminate, and that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is it allows you to create better questions
Mm-hmm.
during your sales
Mm-hmm.
call of like, who really qualifies for
Right.
this? Who can we help
Mm-hmm.
the most? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a journey too. I think
Mm-hmm.
people rush that.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, if you don't know
Mm-hmm.
yet, you probably haven't had enough conversations,
Right.
which nobody,
Mm-hmm.
Deb, wants to hear, because then
Mm-hmm.
that means like, what? I have to have conversations and I might not
Yeah.
make money.
Mm-hmm.
But the
But I've
conversations, you need
launched.
market research. You
Mm-hmm.
need market
Mm-hmm.
research. You need
Right.
to talk to
Mm-hmm.
people and get on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what delays
Mm-hmm.
people is they take 10 months to
Mm-hmm.
figure it out because they're not getting on the phone
Mm-hmm.
and having the calls,
Right. Right. You
testing the
know,
market.
and you mentioned the no's that you got and that you were used to and you could deal with. We also have to get very comfortable with saying no.
Yes.
You know,
Hmm.
and that's hard. I think it's really hard, especially for women. You know, it's hard for people who are, you know, like we said, they're saying, "Oh my God, I have mortgage I have to pay."
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, it's kind of like a muscle, right? The more we use it, the better
Yeah.
it goes. And so once we tell
Yes.
somebody no, then the next time we need to tell somebody no, it doesn't cause quite so much of the
Yeah.
angst.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
I always like, you know, if say I'm turning down a potential client, I like to have someone else to refer them to.
Mm.
You know, and then it's kind of a win-win-win, right? I
Yeah.
won because I
Yeah.
wasn't doing something I didn't want to do. Hopefully the client wins because they have somebody better to be working with. And then whoever I referred them to got a new client. You
Yeah.
know, only if you're thinking, I mean, like I've been doing this for 30 years. In that
Wow.
entire time, there has only been one where it was like, oh no, would not wish this person on my enemy.
Yeah.
And it was funny
Yeah.
because it was one where in the initial conversations with him, I got a feeling, just one of
Mm.
those ew, right? And
Yeah.
now not a creepy ooh, just not a
Yeah.
person I want to work with. Pay attention to those feelings, folks.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, and
Yes.
so this was back when we still really did the written proposals and all of these big glorious things that we spent hours and hours and hours on. And so, you know, I sent him my proposal, even though I was thinking I don't want to win this job. He
Yeah.
came back to me and he said, I really liked you and your
Mm.
agency, but I like this person's proposal, so I want you to implement it.
Wow.
Yeah. And which is, of course, as unethical as it gets.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, you know, I looked at the proposal and he'd redacted their name except in one place. And it
Wow.
happened to be a friend of mine, somebody that I knew very well.
Small
And, you know,
world.
and so I turned him down. Of course, there was no way. And
Yeah.
I told him why. I said, I'm sorry, this is
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
And I contacted her and I said, he's probably going to go with you. You need to know what he just did.
Yeah.
You know, and then I got a very nasty email from him because and which just reinforced all of my feelings that
Right.
this was
You
not
were
going to be
right.
good.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we pay attention to those feelings because we
Yeah.
also have the, oh my gosh, I really, really, really want to work with this person feeling too.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yes.
But
Yes. And I know I can help this person, and that makes you feel so good when you're writing
right.
that proposal
Right.
and you're feeling good about it. So
Right.
I agree with you. And I think that there's a lot of people who would have still taken that deal and
Oh, it was
not told their
many,
friend.
many zeros.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people who would have been like, okay, let me do it. And so good on you. I think it says a lot about your own integrity.
Well, and it was funny because I would check every once in a while. No, he never went anywhere, because that was just the way he was going to always do business. But I love your PDF.
Yeah.
The philosophy, because as marketing people, we're told solve someone's pain. And I'm just not a fan of that. I want to solve their pleasure, their desire, as you said.
Yeah.
And so I just really like that philosophy better as to how can we make their business better, whatever it is, and yeah, you're probably solving a pain at the same time. But to me, it just puts a much more positive aspect on it.
Yeah, right. And I think that a lot of people don't want to think about their pain sometimes, depending on the industry they're in. If there's so many, especially if you talk about like products related to weight and that kind of thing, they really don't want to think about their pain, but they do want to think about the vision that they have for themselves and their future, vision for their mental health or their body. And I want peace and clarity. And those are easier for them to sometimes envision. So I hear you. And I think that, that's why there's a lot of writing that's up to the discernment of the founder or the team that they have, or if you fraction it out to somebody like us. But that's where I think knowing it is the key part of it, Deb, though.
Right.
I think too often, because there hasn't been enough phone calls or market research to learn, you just don't know that their pain. You think their pain is this, and I see that a lot, but their pain is actually something totally different.
Right.
Like somebody might think that their pain is the inability to hire somebody for that next job opening. Like, let's say you're a recruiting firm. Right. And part of that is true, but actually it's that they won't meet the compliance for the government deal that's requiring a certain percentage be engineers with X amount of expertise. And so, yeah, part of the pain is the hiring, but if you go deeper, it's that you lose the contract completely because you're out of compliance.
Right.
That's a bigger pain. It's
because
more than one hire.
Yeah. And that's a ripple effect.
That's a ripple effect. Right. And I think that's our job as marketers, or whoever, if somebody has a marketing department or the founder to spread that knowledge that this is what the real pain is, or what the real desire is that we have a workforce pipeline for the next 5 years. Right. That's a beautiful desire, and that's something that you can paint. But I think with the storytelling piece of all of that, I go back to it because with the pains and desires, if you have a really good picture of it, you can now start to paint it for your audience.
Right.
You could even say, I just got off a sales call and here was the number one thing that they were complaining about. And that's the part of the beginning of your story. You don't need to mention the person's name, and you can stay a little bit distant from that. And it could be a month later, so maybe they don't know, but there are ways where you can pluck. Sales calls are gems for marketing stories.
Right.
And I think that that's actually something that's not talked about, Deb, is that the sales call is like, I tell everyone we work with, we need to be lockstep with your sales team because they hold so much of the PDF. They're hearing it all the time on the sales calls. So if nobody's documenting that or keeping that in safekeeping, it's just lost information.
Right.
So I say that to everyone listening to this, that you want to really document your sales calls so you know why somebody said yes and why somebody said no.
Right.
And
or they're
really
hesitating or any of those steps.
Yeah, you really want to know the why. And obviously you have to have a clear offer, and there's steps involved in all of this. You've been in business a long time, you know that already. But there is a lot to be said for getting on the phone and knowing what's on the sales call and documenting your sales calls. And you can literally take quotes from the sales calls, everybody, and start plucking that into your storytelling content, right? And people talk about case studies, but there's a ton of value to that, and testimonials, but there's something to be said about plucking things from a sales call.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what about truth versus nonfiction. So what I'm meaning by that is
Mm.
making up the story to fit the situation. Is there a benefit to that? Or should it never be done? I mean, because my other thing is I believe obviously this is about relationships. It's
Yeah.
about being authentic. So if I all of a sudden, I'm going to go to an extreme here, talk about, having 5 kids and 8 siblings, people know that's not me. Now
Well, that's lying, right?
yeah,
So I think
yeah.
that's right. It's not you.
Right. And I think, but we hear that, right? Where somebody tries to
Yeah.
sell us something and they're flat out lying about
Yeah.
whatever it is. But they will say, "Oh no, we're telling a story." It's like, no, no, no.
Right, right. It's complete fabrication. So,
Mm-hmm.
of course, I would say not do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'd say, look, stay away from that practice.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you can do for a case study, like let somebody doesn't want to be named.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can say then, a multi-million dollar founder
Right.
in XYZ
Mm-hmm.
industry.
Mm-hmm.
That's still staying in integrity of
Mm-hmm.
protecting the person's name. They don't want
Mm-hmm.
to be quoted, which is their
Right.
right. But then you can write
Mm-hmm.
this story, and then what we do is then we send it back to the client and we say,
Mm-hmm.
is this okay? This
Mm-hmm.
case study that
Mm-hmm.
we want to showcase the work we've helped achieve, the
Mm-hmm.
transformation in your business. Very different from completely making it
Mm-hmm.
up because it's easier to do
Right.
that. I also think that the market is smarter than we think.
Mm-hmm.
I think especially, I mean, I will not talk about politics right now, but we know that the market is getting smarter, like what's authentic and
Mm-hmm.
what's not.
Right.
And I think we have to give people credit.
Mm-hmm.
Those who want to see through it
Mm-hmm.
do.
Right.
Now, if you don't want to see through something,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to turn a blind eye, right?
Right.
You're just
Oh
like,
yeah.
okay, I take it for
Mm-hmm.
face value, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
it is. But when we think about the messaging coming out
Mm-hmm.
and so forth, when we are authentic, even if it's something we don't agree with, we're like, well, that's who that person is.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They
Yeah.
didn't lie,
Yeah.
but
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
fabrication, I think to your
Mm-hmm.
point, that's when you're really, really crossing a
Mm-hmm.
line and you're not even giving
Mm-hmm.
your audience, you're not staying in
Mm-hmm.
integrity,
Right.
I should say.
Well, and
Yeah.
you will probably be found out,
Right. Probably.
and especially if they end up working with you and then they discover, wait a minute, you overpromised and
Uh-huh.
underdelivered, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to say, I don't know, or
Yeah.
all of those things. I'm going to go back to my media training. Long ago I was a media spokesperson, so I was on the
Oh,
other
wow.
side of the camera.
Yeah.
And you know one of the things, people would ask a question and you didn't know the answer, or maybe you
Yeah.
didn't want to give the answer.
Yeah.
And so I would say, rather than hedging and jumping and ducking and weaving, I don't know, but I'll
Yeah.
get you that answer.
Yeah.
And and then I would. I mean, that was of course the other important
Yeah.
part of that. So it's okay if a potential client says, "Hey, can your product do XYZ?" Maybe you don't know.
Right.
It's okay to tell them, "I don't know, but I'll find out. And if
Yeah.
this is something you want, we'll see if we can build it in." Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I could totally see you as a spokesperson, by the way.
I know, I'm so shy and retiring.
No, I can just tell. I can just tell. I'm like, oh yeah, you'd be a great spokesperson. But I think that's absolutely true. And I will say this, I think you could also say, I'm not sure about that,
Mhm.
but here's what I know we can do.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So you
Flip it
just
a little
turn
bit.
it. Mhm.
Just turn
Right.
it, like
Mhm.
stay on here's what I know we can deliver for you. Here's what I
Mhm.
know that we're seeking.
Mhm.
And I think people can also sense, which is not, again, talked about as much, but that confidence during that
Mhm.
prospect call or
Mhm.
conversation or
Right.
media interview
Mhm.
in your case, right? But people can sense the confidence and they can
Mhm.
sense that you're about what you say you're about.
Right.
I think
Mhm.
there's a conviction that comes
Mhm.
through that is
Mhm.
hard for us to tangibly
Mhm.
say, but we can feel it.
Mhm.
Like I purchased from others, right? Like
Mhm.
my business coach, I remember when
Mhm.
he first talked to me and the first thing I thought was, he's going to tell me the truth.
Mhm. Right.
And there was something about the conviction of that. And then when I
Mhm.
hired a woman as a different business
Mhm.
coach, later on, I thought, she's going to tell me
Mhm.
the truth.
Mhm.
She
Right.
told me the truth during the sales call.
Right. Even if it wasn't the truth I wanted to hear.
Correct. And at one point she said, maybe it's just not the right time for you.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh, oh my goodness, she's turning
Right.
me down. You know, there's like a
Yeah,
little
but then that
ego,
created
the
that desire.
ego.
Well, I'm going
Yeah,
to show her, right?
exactly, exactly. The ego, right, was felt a little bit, but if I'm honest. And then I was like, oh, but that means she's not willing to take me just because I'm willing to pay her.
Right.
Actually selective about it. And because she knows that I won't maybe do the
Mhm.
work or she won't get the results, back to
Mhm.
what we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
So, and I've had some fantastic coaches. So I know what it's like to sit in the seat
Mhm.
and make a big purchase and think,
Mhm.
oh, is this person going to be able to deliver,
Mhm.
or will
Right.
they be able to do this or
Mhm.
that? I mean, and if you're in business and you're doing it well, I think you're always investing in
Mhm.
yourself to some extent, right, Deb?
Mhm.
So you're always pouring into
Mhm.
yourself in one way or another.
Mhm.
I'm like, oh yeah, I've probably spent a
Mhm.
nice college education on myself post college, just on
Oh, I
all the
know.
business
Mhm.
stuff,
Mhm.
all the business learnings
Mhm.
and things that I wanted to get better at. And
Mhm.
that's been my route.
Mhm.
But yes, I totally think that you need to stay in integrity. At the end of
Mhm.
the day, you need to stay in integrity,
Mhm.
and fabricating a story, while it may be a beautiful
Mhm.
story, it's still a fabricated story.
Mhm. Right, right.
Right.
And as we know, it's always harder to remember the details of a lie. And so if they question you on it, you might get it wrong. If it's the
Hmm.
truth, it's easy for you to answer with the
That's right.
truth.
That's right. That's right. I think more often than not, Deb, what's happening though is people just aren't writing anything
Mhm.
because there's a lot of fear
Mhm.
around visibility.
Right.
There's a lot of fear around putting themselves out there,
Mhm.
like, oh, what if I make a mistake?
Mhm.
But the reality is they're not even trying.
Mhm.
So they're not in the game, but they're worried
Mhm.
about spraining their ankle in the
Mhm.
game.
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
But you're not on the court. You're not on the
Mhm.
basketball court,
Mhm.
but you're thinking of the worst case
Mhm.
scenario. What if I break a leg?
Mhm.
But you're not even on the
Mhm.
bench.
Mhm.
You're not even warming the
Right.
bench. You're not even
Right.
in the gym.
Mhm. Mhm.
So my whole thing is like, get in the gym,
Mhm.
get on the court,
Right.
start playing, start
Mhm.
testing, putting things out there,
Mhm.
putting some
Mhm.
threads. And look, you can talk about your
Mhm.
career before you became an entrepreneur. You
Mhm.
can talk about what you offer as an entrepreneur. You just
Mhm.
don't want to be salesy in everything
Mhm.
that you put out there, as we
Mhm.
both know. But I think the fear around visibility and what if I mess this up is so large for so many people. And the perfectionist piece of it
Mhm.
of, well, wouldn't it be better if I sounded like this? You just gotta hit go sometimes. Like
Mhm. Right.
just
Mhm.
post.
Mhm.
And trust me,
Mhm.
you'll see the market
Mhm.
feedback. And 9 times out of 10, it's positive feedback.
Mhm. Right.
It's, I mean, I haven't heard anything negative in a long
Mhm.
time. Now, if
Right.
I'm on the news, there's a lot of political stuff, and
Oh,
sure, that's a different story,
that's
right? Different
different.
story.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
if you're doing a post on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
a lot of people are actually rooting for you,
Mhm.
and they're
Right.
thinking, I wish I could put myself
Mhm.
out there like
Mhm.
that. The same people you
Right.
worry
Mhm.
about, wow, everyone's going to see this. Um, we had a client who had never posted. They have actually a very successful business,
Mhm.
heavily in the government contract arena. And they're like, but we're not visible at all. We've done all
Mhm.
these things. We've gotten awards and all.
Mhm.
And and I said, why? I said, what's held you back until now? And she said, I think it's just the hesitation that a lot of people are going to be looking at it and
Mhm.
thinking things of,
Mhm.
well, what would they be thinking? And I
Right.
had to walk her
Mhm.
through, like,
Mhm.
what would they be thinking? And
Yeah.
what would that mean for you?
Mhm.
And why does that
Mhm.
matter to you? And just like get to the
Mhm.
real root of it. And it was just caring what people think at the end of
Mhm.
the day,
Mhm.
who are so busy, they may not even read your
Right.
post.
Are
They're
they
they're
your
taking
people?
coffee and eating
Yeah.
lunch and
Mhm.
they're running
Mhm.
around. Are they? Yeah, half the time they're not even seeing your
Mhm.
post. They're definitely
Mhm.
not seeing every post you put out there.
Right.
You could
Mhm.
repeat a post every 3 months and nobody
Mhm.
would even notice,
Mhm.
I do that every
Mhm.
like 6 months. I'll probably repeat a
Mhm.
post.
Right.
Just take something from back in the day
Mhm.
and repost
Mhm.
it and maybe tweak it a little bit.
Mhm.
But but I think there's just a huge fear. Once people move past that
Mhm.
fear, then it becomes, how can I
Mhm.
write better? How can I get
Mhm.
on video better? How can I
Right.
move past
Mhm.
whatever it is? But I think in
Mhm.
this day and age, Deb, and I'm curious to know if you agree, like, I think there's no excuse not to have a personal brand if you're in
Right.
business.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing that people need to remember. They might be the CEO of, the founder of, the
Right.
manager of, but we are our own brands and we
Yes.
have to own that.
Correct.
And of course LinkedIn is the best place to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so but so let's just kind of go there and talk about LinkedIn, because I think
Yeah.
so many people still have absolutely no idea what to do. When LinkedIn first came out, you cut and you
Yeah.
pasted your resume. And, I've gone to people's bios or their profiles, and I know they haven't updated anything for months.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to open it and the crickets are going to come out. And, so for me, because people aren't using it right or aren't using it
Yeah.
at all,
Yeah.
that's a great opportunity for people who do use it correctly.
Yes, it is. It is. You're absolutely right. So let me talk about right now what's working on LinkedIn.
Okay. Yep.
So let's talk about that, because I think we can go different directions, and I want to be mindful of everyone's time. So first and foremost, if you don't have a high resolution photo, you need to get a high resolution photo.
Right.
I joke with people, I'm like, yes, go to JCPenney if you have to, right? Like people are like, oh, they still do photos? They still do photos.
Walgreens, passport photo.
Just do something to get a high resolution photo. That doesn't mean you can't do a brand photo shoot in a month, but for right now, just run to your local, whatever it is, and get it done. So get that high resolution photo, and then make sure your headline is working for you. Oftentimes, like you said, people haven't updated their headline. They've won awards. You need to say what you do for your clients in that headline. I love that. Like, we help so-and-so, like you said, the desires, achieve, whatever it might be, result, mental health, stability, or peace of mind through business strategy, whatever it might be, right?
Right.
So
and
you want to make sure you
president,
have that.
company XYZ, yawn.
Yeah, yawn. Don't leave it at just that. And there's so much room in that headline. Do you know, Deb, you can you can say you're the CEO, and you can put what you do, and you can put your awards. I mean, mine has like 10 things in there. Like, I'm just like, oh, you get an idea of who I am instantly. Why is this so important though? Because when you make a comment, so when everybody here comments on Deb's post, the first thing we see are those first, probably 5 words of your headline. So if you're not telling me anything that makes me want to go to your page, it's hurting you. Okay, so let me get that out of the way. So everyone needs to do those things. So what's working on LinkedIn? One thing we know that's working is spacing out your posts.
Yes.
So making it easy on the eye. So you don't want to write full paragraphs. Most people have caught on to that. So good. The other thing that's really working is carousels right now. So carousels take a little bit more of, I would say, creativity to create, but they're very well worth it when you know your target audience and you're able to speak to them. The carousels, for those of you who are like, what is a carousel? Just consider it a multi-page PDF. So you write a post, and then you might say, here are the 7 steps to get to landing, I'm making this up, 10K a month, okay? 7 steps I did to achieve 10K a month within 30 days, okay? And then you have to make the title juicy enough that people want it, but the carousel cannot be something that I could just chat GPT and answer to.
Right.
I need you to walk me through the how-tos. Make that carousel so good. I compare it to making it the freebie you give off your website. Like, you got to make it that good so people actually want to join your newsletter because the freebie off your website was so good. So that's what makes carousels work. If you don't do that right, it flops. So carousels are super hot right now. Video is still really good. In January of 2025, now stats can change, there was an uptick of 34% more likelihood of engagement if you posted video. So video is hot.
I went to your profile, and the one I clicked on was the video.
Because not enough people also, Deb, are doing video. So back to what you said, the people who are doing things right, like they're doing video because they're paying attention. So also look at, I say, listen to me and listen to Deb, but do your own little, quasi-market research. Start watching LinkedIn and what's working. The other thing is the first 200 characters of what you write in a post, extremely important. Because in order to get the read more prompt, which tells LinkedIn people want to stay on your post, which helps your algorithms because they want to stay on there, right? They're clicking read more. The first 200 characters really have to pop. So you've got to say something that's going to make people want to read more. Otherwise, you could say something brilliant in your post, but nobody's reading it.
Yeah.
So make sure your lead, make sure you're a lead, that what you're saying off top is really, really good. What else is working? We know that we know this on every platform that images do really well. Like if Deb posts a selfie, not every post, but we know that if you post a selfie or you're doing something interesting, that's going to work. What I like to encourage our clients I always say, and our copywriters, because I have a team of copywriters, is you want to link in the first 200 characters what's happening in the photo. Much like in journalism, if you're watching
Okay.
something on the screen, you want to be thinking, okay, how am I tying this so
Right.
that we know what the significance is of this photo or video? Too often we talk about that like 5 sentences in.
And
Tell me
people don't read it.
immediately. And people don't read it because they didn't
Right.
click the read more. Exactly. So those are some quick tips. The other thing that people are not doing right is they're scheduling posts when ideally you really want to post. You can create a draft, and LinkedIn allows you to schedule. So for all the very busy people, if you're scheduling, cool. But you got to know that your algorithms are going to favor you more if you post it live.
Okay.
So create it in draft mode, that's fine, but post it live. 8:30 to 9:30 EST, Eastern Time Zone, for those of your international listeners. I know that means like, oh my God, what time is that? Right. But it may be not so ideal if you're in certain parts of the country, of the world, I should say, because it's wee hours. But 8:30 to 9:30 EST is really good. And obviously this depends on your audience. So, people should be mindful of that. Another thing that's important is that before you post, spend about 10-20 minutes before you post engaging on other people's comments. Think of it as telling LinkedIn, I'm awake today. I'm awake and working.
Hello, I'm a real person.
I'm a real person, and it helps the algorithms. And I'm not an algorithm junkie, but I know enough and I pay attention enough that 10-20 minutes of me engaging on Deb's post and somebody else's post, there's something about it. If you have a team like of friends or accountability partners, Deb, or your employees, within the first hour of posting, LinkedIn is looking at, is your post worth us kind of boosting more?
Right. Showing it again.
Yeah. So you want to make sure that they're commenting. So comment on those posts.
And I want to be very clear here, folks. Comment, not just click like.
And yes, and make a comment. I'll add to that, piggyback off that. You want to like, comment, and give a thoughtful comment. So when we just say thank you, that's done. That was 5 years ago. LinkedIn now wants you to say like, thank you. I love what you're doing on your page as well. Like, say something compelling. And
I saw something that said it wants 5 words. It wants at least 5 words.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense, Deb. Totally. So yeah, so you want to be engaging. You have to remember it's a social platform. So engage with others. A lot of people post and walk away. You want to like and respond to people's posts. You want to engage on the platform. These are all things that a lot of people know to do, Deb, but they're not making intentional time. That's what I would say to anyone listening. You have to be intentional with your strategy, intentionally listening to what's going to work, and then paying attention to the trends.
Right. And, folks, we're not talking hours here. This is 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30. Yeah. And it's about building those relationships and doing all of those things. So what are people, we've kind of talked a little bit about what are a couple of the things that people are doing wrong aside from not doing anything?
Yeah. Right. That's number one. But only posting about awards. I see that all the time. Or only posting about, here's a conference I went to. Everything's very I. Yeah. And look, there's a place for that. You can do that sometimes, but I think to do it every single post and you're only posting every 3 weeks. And when you do, it's all about you. I think that's not telling your audience that you're there to provide, like I said, value-based content.
Right.
So the video I put up today, it's March 11th. The video that I posted today is really talking about visibility and how to take back control of your narrative with so many who are depending on government contracts. So I'm giving inspiration, I'm giving a different perspective. It didn't take me 10 hours to do that, folks, right? It's a quick video. And maybe the next post won't be something inspirational, it'll be more tactical, more strategic. But I think you have to mix it up. That's the thing that a lot of people aren't doing, Deb. And I think this is something that's harder to do, is to make sure you have diverse content. Just even if you take away some of the value pieces, that you're offering diverse perspective of how do you think, what's happening in your business?
Right.
What was something you learned this year as a business owner and maybe hiring? What are you worried about? What are you loving? What are you desiring? And so like talking about it, but from the lens of your industry or your business. So really giving diverse thought. In my company, we look at themes, so personal, educational. And when you think about things in themes, you can say, okay, this is more of an educational post. This is more of an insight post.
Right.
This is more of a personal post. So we get the variety because people love variety. It's the spice of life, right? So the same thing applies to everyone's content. So I'd say that's a big thing that a lot of people are not are not doing. Like that's the mistake they're making is that there's not a variety of content. And then the other thing is making sure that this is easy, but people are not doing it, making sure your headline and about section are filled in properly and that are accurate. A lot of people, we shift audiences. We shift what we do. I used to have a mastermind, Deb. I used to coach one-on-one before I had an agency, right? If I still had that, that would be old news, no pun intended, but like super old news. If that was still in my about section, that is gone. Like you don't even know I did that. That's how gone it is. But too often we're not updating things. And that the other thing I think people are still not doing in this day and age is you're talking to the same audience for months and months and months. You're not adding new eyeballs. Every conference you go to, you should be adding. I literally have it on the floor. I take this and I make sure myself or my assistant adds every name who's at that conference.
Yeah. And then
Austin
you add a
whatever.
quick little note. Hey, love seeing you. And I tell people add a person a day, just a person a day.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's really pretty easy to do. And maybe that person is, you saw them commenting several times on somebody else's post and you're thinking, ooh, they look pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Or, I used to love when we had the physical newspaper. Now I still get the newspaper. But the business journals do those lists, right?
Oh, right.
So that, and I loved those because I would go through and I would find those people on LinkedIn and I would say, Bofta, congratulations on being named one of the, right?
So
we all like hearing about ourselves. And, and so, and I made some of the best connections in the world just by spending 5 minutes doing that.
Yep. And I think that's something that most people are not doing. Right. So, we live in a digital and in-person world. And I think the best mix is when you're connecting both worlds so that, they're continuing to follow your content. They didn't meet you at a conference last year and don't hear from you until the next conference. It's like they're following you. So when you see them, they're like, oh my goodness, I know I need your services. I can't tell you how many conferences I go to year after year. And I'm like, somebody will say, I've been following you on LinkedIn, or I know you already. Oh yeah, I know you're on LinkedIn, or whatever platform. So there's a lot of power in that, but you do have to create consistent and a variety of content to get that type of winning formula and then add those new eyeballs to your point, Deb.
Right. Well, oh my gosh, we've only got a couple minutes left and this has been such a great discussion. We just need to chat again because you've got such great information.
Thank you.
But for people who are saying, okay, I know I need to do this. I can't do this. How do they find you and what are the services that you provide?
Yeah. So thank you, Deb, for asking. So for anyone who's thinking that we might be a good fit, one of the biggest things that we do is that LinkedIn ghostwriting, where we take care of all of your LinkedIn for you, everything from the graphics to the video editing to, of course, the storytelling and the content and the thought leadership that you're really putting out there. Another major one is website design and website language. We handle your website A to Z and really making sure that it aligns in your current messaging with your current target audience. And then we have a plethora of other services, personal branded photo shoot, the coordination of all of that. And then really looking at your whole marketing strategy. So there's a whole list of things on our services page on our website, storylede.com, and it's spelled STORYLEDE.com. So lead, LEDE.com. So that's where you can take a look at our services. But I would say if there's any piece of you that's remotely interested, follow me on LinkedIn. Send me a direct message. I will promise to get back to you within 24 hours. And so the best thing is follow some of the content and then just send me a message and say, tell me what you're looking for and most importantly, what you're looking to achieve. If it's visibility and you're really looking for thought leadership in the storytelling, then we're probably the best home for you. But that's what I would say to anyone who's remotely thinking that we might be a good fit for them. I also do a ton of speaking. And so if you are an organization looking for a speaker on anything from leadership to public speaking to marketing, feel free to check out my website, which is boftayimam.com. That's my personal branded speaker website, which I've had for many, many years.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Well, this really has been so much fun. And when I look down and see that, we have almost no time, it's always like, oh,
I know. It was so much fun.
I know, and we'll have you on again because this is such great content. And of course, as you were talking, I was sitting here thinking, I'm making all of those mistakes on LinkedIn.
No. Well, you'll course correct it. You can play this back and your team is savvy, so I know they can do it.
And of course, the thing will be to make those changes and then see the positive results of it. So that'll be great fun. But until we have you back again, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
The big thing that I would say is play big. Like, this is not the time to play small. Wherever you are in your journey, play big, go for it. Go for something that's out of reach. Try the new thing. I think, we have to always remember that tomorrow's not promised. And so I have, I don't want to end the podcast on this note, but before I was even 41, I lost both my parents. And so my perspective on things is like, this is the time you have, right? And I think that you can't get the time back. So whatever you're dreaming about, play big, go for it.
Oh my gosh. I love it. I love it. Well, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having such a fun discussion with Bofta Yimam. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.